I thought I lost everything when my husband died. But then came Edward, a quiet boy who somehow knew our song, our memories, even the way he used to call me Maggie. I kept asking myself, how could he know all that? He was my son, but not what he seemed. Please don't forget to subscribe and comment. My name is Margaret Eleanor Holloway, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 65 now, and my days are slower than they used to be. I live in a quiet old house on the outskirts of Charleston, where the trees hum lullabies and the river nearby whispers secrets I'd rather not remember. This house holds memories, some bright as morning sun and others dim as twilight fog. One memory has haunted me the longest. It's about my son, Edward Franklin Holloway. But he was not what he seemed. Edward came into my life in the summer of 1989, during a time when I was convinced my world had crumbled. My husband, Henry Walter Holloway, had passed away 6 months before. He was the kindest man, a retired high school teacher who still corrected the grammar of TV reporters and never left a single dish in the sink. His absence left a void so deep, I could barely breathe without feeling the echo of his voice. That's when I got the call. The agency said his name was Edward, a young boy who had been left behind after a tragic accident on the interstate. No known relatives. Just a picture tucked into his coat pocket with my name scribbled on the back. Margaret Eleanor Holloway. I didn't understand it. I had no idea who he was or why my name would be connected to him. But when I saw him, standing in the doorway of that group home with his solemn eyes and fingers gripping the strap of a worn satchel, I felt something strange. Like I'd met him before. Like he belonged. He was 12. Too thin for his height, with shaggy brown hair and an intensity in his gaze that made even the social worker pause before saying goodbye. When he came home with me, he barely spoke for the first week. He would sit by the window, sketching things in a journal. Birds, trees, faces I didn't recognize. But what unsettled me most was how he always seemed to know where everything was in the house, as if he'd lived there before. One evening I asked, "How do you know your way around so well?" He looked at me, tilted his head slightly and said, "I remember it from a dream." I laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off. Kids had imaginations. I told myself not to overthink it. But then little things started happening. He knew where Henry kept his coin collection, the exact drawer and box. He knew the tune Henry used to hum when reading the newspaper. He even asked if the garden swing still squeaked. I stared at him. "Have you been here before?" He shrugged. "Not really. Just feels like I have." Weeks passed, and Edward slowly opened up. He was polite, unusually observant, and always seemed to watch me as if studying my reactions. I taught him how to cook apple pie the way Henry liked it. He picked it up too quickly, adding cinnamon before I could suggest it. When I asked how he knew, he said, "Just made sense." One morning I was dusting the study, and I noticed one of Henry's journals missing from the bookshelf. When I asked Edward about it, he said he'd borrowed it. I didn't think much of it until I opened it later that night and saw a new entry. "Maggie is lonely. But I'm here now. I won't let her be alone again." The handwriting mimicked Henry's so precisely, it took my breath away. I asked Edward the next day, trying not to sound accusatory. He blinked slowly and said, "I just imagined how he might write." His voice was always calm, never defensive. But something in his tone reminded me of Henry in a way that felt more than coincidence. I kept telling myself I was grieving, that I was trying to find pieces of my husband in a boy who needed a home. But the signs kept piling up. He knew my wedding song. He knew I was allergic to lilies. He knew the name of the stray dog Henry once tried to adopt when we were young. Things no one had any way of knowing. Called the agency. Asked for more information. But their files were thin. A John Doe child, no ID, no family. Just that photograph with my name on the back. Then came the evening he looked me in the eyes and said, "Maggie, do you remember the lake house? The summer you slipped and I carried you to the dock." Felt dizzy. I hadn't told anyone about that. Not even friends. Just Henry and me laughing at how clumsy I was. Him lifting me like it was nothing. It was a memory locked deep inside. "Who told you that?" I whispered. "You did," he said, placing his hand gently over mine. "Years ago." My heart raced. I wanted to believe he was just perceptive, intuitive even. But there was a certainty in his voice, in his eyes, that shattered every reasonable explanation. That night, I sat on my porch swing long after he went to bed. The stars flickered above, and I found myself talking to the sky. To Henry. "Is it you? Did you send him? Or are you in him?" I don't know what to believe. The wind rustled the trees gently, as if answering in hushes I couldn't understand. The days turned into months, and life with Edward became almost ordinary again. He grew taller. He laughed more. But every so often, I caught him looking at me with that knowing gaze. One evening, I walked into the living room to find him playing our old record, the one Henry and I danced to on our anniversary every year. "Where did you find that?" he asked. "Top shelf, behind the board games." Exactly where it had been for decades. "Will you dance with me, Maggie?" he asked. My breath hitched. No child had ever called me by my name like that. Only Henry did. I hesitated, then offered my hand. We danced slowly, awkwardly at first, then in a rhythm that felt hauntingly familiar. Tears pricked my eyes. I pulled away gently and said, "Who are you really, Edward?" He looked up and said, "Maybe just someone who was meant to find you again." I never got a straight answer. Over the years, Edward became my son in every way. He went to college, studied architecture like Henry once dreamed of. He never dated much, always said he didn't need anyone else. I worried about that. I wanted him to have a life of his own. "You gave me one," he would say. "That's enough." Even now, when he calls every Sunday like clockwork, there's that strange sense in me. That I'm speaking not just to the boy I raised, but to a soul I once loved in another life. People ask why I never remarried. I smile and tell them love came back to me in the most unexpected way. They don't understand. And that's okay. Edward was my son. But not what he seemed. And yet he was exactly what I needed.